Many big news this week, including the failed assassination attempt of Donald Trump, American President Joseph Biden speaking nonsense, Russia and China conducting joint military exercise, Russia planning to assassinate the head of Ryan Metal, a German military industrial complex giant. The USA announces plans to place missiles in Germany and Russians responding. And did Z really suffer stroke? Because that would change everything. Howdy, everyone. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Every Wednesday, I give you my takes on important world news. You will not find it anywhere, definitely not in the mainstream media. And let's start with something from America, with what might be not just the biggest news of the week, but the biggest news of the year. This event will definitely be remembered for a very long time. It has made history. Donald Trump survived the assassination attempt. And it was pretty darn close. I will not repeat what happened, as you all have heard of it. I'll just give you my take on that. First of all, my opinion, and then Russian propaganda, what Russian propaganda and Russians are saying about that. In my opinion, that definitely was a hero moment. The guy suffered for public servitude. Trump bled for America. I don't know about the USA. I'm not sure. I'm not a big expert on American politics. But in Russia, the assassination attempt was the talk of the country. In Uzbekistan as well. Everyone knows, everyone watched, everyone saw the pictures, and everyone has an opinion on that. Wild theories have been running through both propaganda and people's heads, and let Uzbekistan be left out of the picture. Let's talk about, Russia and Russian propaganda. So all kinds of wild theories have been running. Common theory among Russian propaganda is that the evil government wanted to get rid of the big friend of Russia, Donald Trump, who would strip Ukraine of all military and financial aid if elected, and give Ukraine to Russia on a plate with fork and a knife, and then Russia will finally win the war. And of course, evil Satanists, they don't want that. So they decided to assassinate friend Donald Trump. Yeah, by the way, among Russian propaganda, Donald Trump is considered a big friend of Russia. Some even call him, our man in America, Donald Trump. And I personally think that's absolutely not true. That's nonsense. Donald Trump is not a friend of Russia. What it seems like he has only one friend, and that's himself. Anyway. That's what we've been hearing for the last 5 days. Deep state behind it, behind the assassination attempt. The Democrats, the Satanists, the evil people, you name it. It's bad, bad, bad. And another theory, not official though, but I've heard it a few times from even Z people, from the officials, but that's not what Russian propaganda is selling as the official theory. Well, it's not official because it doesn't benefit Russian propaganda. So that is that it wasn't a fake. It was a fake attempt. Then people who say that, when you ask them, confront them, you ask them, who is behind it? They start getting confused. You ask them, is it Trump himself? To risk his life like that, we all saw that he was nearly assassinated. Okay, it was just by miracle he was saved. And then they have nothing to say. And I think that this theory is laughingstock. That was staged. No, it was not staged. I personally think there is no one behind it. The assassination was attempted by a lone gunman, fanatic, crazy guy. I don't know who he is. It's for the American Special Services to find out. The attempt was real. You can't fake it, And Donald Trump is incredibly lucky. That's what I think. I think he had double lucky because it was his luckiest moment of his entire life. His life, he's lucky to be alive. And what's even luckier, the world will always remember this photo, It's everywhere, even in Uzbekistan. Fight, fight, fight. That's a part of the history now. Used to be a very controversial former president that some people didn't like and some liked, but now he's become a hero who risked his life and bled for the American people. And that's, we all saw that. It's, Trump the hero was born on the 13th. Yeah, one more thing. Everyone has been discussing how miserably the Secret Service failed. And they did. And right after this assassination news comes another news from America. And it's from the current president. He's the newsmaker. Please watch Joseph Biden.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
President of Ukraine, President Putin.
He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President. I'm better. You are a hell of a lot better.
Well, no matter how you are set on beating Vladimir Putin, you just can't call the president of Ukraine Putin. Calling Zelensky Putin, that's quite something. I think embarrassing doesn't even describe it, doesn't even get close. But that's not it. Let's keep on watching from the same newsmaker, from the American president.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she's not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
Well, I don't know how do you explain that. Fighting vice president or whatever. Calling his vice president female Trump proves us that the previous news was not really coincidence, But hey, that keeps on happening. Let's watch the reaction of his team on what he said. Check it out, and I like it very much.
President Trump to be vice president.
Look at this, guys.
Not qualified to be president.
Embarrassed.
There. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is.
Those people sitting there you just saw, I find them very professional, and Biden has a good team. The U.S. Secretary has been great at what he does, And look at them. They're embarrassed of what their boss says. Both Russian propaganda and regular people in Russia have been talking about that too. Everyone watched the videos. Everyone, even here in Uzbekistan. And there's one opinion. America is run by the old man who is not friends with his own head. And honestly, it's really hard to disagree with that opinion. And right after that news comes another news from the newsmaker, from our current American president. Joseph Biden, after all happened, after his infamous debate with Donald Trump, after this slips of the tongue, he refused to withdraw from the presidential race. In the first interview after the failed debate with Donald Trump, U.S. President Joe Biden said that he intends to continue participating in the election race and will not undergo a special medical examination to prove the voters his ability to work as head of the state for another 4 years. I am the guy who stopped Putin, said Mr. President. Funny, I thought that was the armed forces of Ukraine, the people of Ukraine were the ones who stopped Putin. But hey, what do I know? It turns out it's Biden stopped Putin. Well, you go try, Biden. We'll see how you'll perform against that guy standing up, bleeding with his fist up, saying, fight, 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 you know. One doesn't have to be a, you know, genius marketologist or a PR expert to understand, you know, what's going on and what's going to happen. Well, we'll see soon. There's a few months left. And the news comes from Georgia. Georgia, the country, not the state. Vladimir Teterev, a Russian teacher of history, social studies and philosophy, who left Russia after the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, was denied entry to Georgia from Armenia. You see, he had left to Armenia for a brief visit. Armenia and Georgia are neighbors. They're very close. Their capitals are very close to each other, just a few-hour drive. So he left for Armenia for a brief visit, although he permanently lives in Georgia. And the authorities didn't give them the reason they denied entry back to Georgia. They didn't give them the reason for his non-admission. But the border guards, that's where it gets interesting. You know, the border guards told Vladimir's friend, who was also crossing the border with Vladimir, and asked why you're not letting him in. The guy said he knows why. And he does. Vladimir Teterev gave an interview to CNN during the protests against the Georgian parliament creating this law on foreign agents, the Russian law. And Vladimir Teterev criticized the parliament, and he criticized this law. And, you know, I would have done the same thing. No, I would do the same thing. I would do the same thing because that's a first brick in the foundation in the direction where Russia is. And for going live and giving an interview to CNN, later revenge was taken on him. He was denied entry to Georgia. I mean, he has no rights. He lives in Georgia, but he has no rights of living there. He's not a permanent resident or anything. He's just an escapee from Russia, seeking refuge. It's very sad. Sad to see that Georgia, the country who had bloodless revolution, who was the first one, the pioneer, who showed everyone how, you know, democracy is born. We, the people, spoke in 2003. They overthrew the current president, the former USSR Minister of Foreign Affairs, Shevardnadze, okay? So we, the people, showed everyone how it's done in a good way. And that country is changing back to totalitarianism. Georgian people have been fighting, but they seem to be losing. Sad, very sad. Let's jump to the next news. The neighbor of Georgia is Armenia, and it's showing a different example. It's shaking off Russian influence. It's set to withdraw from the military treaty with Russia. And I made a live stream named Armenia Divorces Russia, where I explained what is happening. And the Armenian president does this. Please watch. He just takes out his bike and he starts cycling through Yerevan, the capital of Armenia. He's probably has a couple bodyguards around him. Perhaps one of them is filming. I want you to look carefully at this picture. This is, to me, to a Russian, that is absolutely fascinating. Because in my country, this is impossible. My country is run by a strongman who cares about his absolute power. Okay, and he is very afraid to go out and do something like that, to meet people without protection. Okay, because he's a strongman and he's holding on to his power. And the Armenian president, well, he's definitely president of the people. This video has some kind of a European vibe, something I would expect from European leaders, but definitely not from Russian ones. I personally love when the presidents are not strongmen, but regular people living regular lives. Let's move on to the next news that comes from China. And China and Russia have launched joint naval exercises, joint military exercise. Check this out. This is happening in China, but Russian military arrived to China. 2 ships. Was the music and all that. The exercise is called the Maritime Cooperation 2024. The opening ceremony was held in the Chinese port of I really have a hard time saying Chinese names, I'm sorry. Zhanjiang. I think that's the best I can do. From the Russian side, Russia's Pacific Fleet corvettes, Loud and Frisky, are participating in the exercise. The exercise will be held from has been held from July 15th to July 18th. So it's set to end today. Do you see? Do you see? That's has been very loud noise from propaganda. Messages they send is exactly like this. Do you see? Do you see what China is our best friend? It's such a friend that we're doing military exercises with it. China is our best friend no matter what. We have no problems with China. Do you see that? And they show this picture of the maritime exercise. Do you see that? Well, I see that. But not only don't see things, okay? I think about things. And that's probably, I'm not very usual Russian because of that. Because Russians probably just see things, okay? And they don't think. Before I tell you my analysis, all right? I want you to see something else that is pretty funny. Russian propaganda wants Russians to see things. It doesn't want them to hear things.
Удивительно, но близость двух стран проявляется даже в этом. Китайские хунцы Си Цзиньпина и российский аурус Владимира Путина припаркованы вместе. Посмотрите, насколько близко друг к другу.
So this guy is a reporter that is very close to Vladimir Putin. He follows him. His last name is Zarubin. So he goes around and films everything. So and then he's filming 2 limos. One belongs to Vladimir Putin, another one to the Chinese leader Xi. There's 2 limos standing right next to each other. And he goes, do you see? That is a sign how close our countries are, how friendly our countries are. Even the limos of both leaders are parked next to each other. Well, I tell you what, if we don't just see, but we think just a little bit, this is what we can come up with. The Chinese are very smart and very sly people. It's their culture. It's the East. They are the masters of the East. Eastern philosophy, Eastern mentality, very different from the West. They keep on outsmarting and outslying Russia again and again and again. Talking the talk to appease and relax Russia. They do that all the time, but at the same time, they walk the walk that benefits them. They do things that benefit them. The crisis with non-payments from Russian companies to the Chinese banks is growing. It has not been solved. Vladimir Putin personally ran to China right after he was announced the president of Russia for the 5th time. And then he negotiated that problem. He couldn't do anything. Words are words. Chinese talk the talk very nicely. They say, yes, of course, we are friends. Yeah, let's do the military exercise. But when it comes to real deal, Russia's out of luck. And the Russian government is in panic, as this problem is a real threat to the economy. It's probably in the top 3 economic problems right now. The Russian companies simply cannot pay to the Chinese to get goods delivered. Chinese refuse the money. That's it. And the crisis is growing. Okay, it's existential threat to Russian government and to Putin himself. At the same time, they do the military exercise, the Naval Cooperation 2024. Great. Look how big of a friends they are. Look, they park their limos right next to each other. I'd like to remind Russian strongmen and Russian people in general one thing they probably have forgotten about, and they shouldn't, okay? The Nazi Germany was befriending the USSR and Stalin from 1939 to 1941. Wehrmacht also had joint military exercises with the Red Army in 1940. Wehrmacht soldiers and officers even participated in the Red Army parades in Moscow as great friends in 1940, and we know what followed. So I would like to say that Russians shouldn't be so forgetful, okay? So you gotta know your past and not to make mistakes in the future, but that's not the case with Putin and Russia. Okay. Before I jump to the next news, I'd like to thank you, friends. Those of you who bought me coffees at buymeacoffee.com, your support shows that you value my work highly, and this is very inspirational and very satisfying, very moving. Big thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The next news is from Mongolia. Yeah, just give it a watch. This is a huge holiday in Mongolia. Mongolia is a huge state. It's around size of Europe and only has 2 million people living there. 1 million live in the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. This is where it's happening. And another million is scattered throughout the country, as large as Europe. And this is one of the biggest holidays that they have. Theatrical performances and so forth. This has been the glimpse into the life of Mongolians. I've been to Mongolia personally. We had a power plant built there, and I confirm you that what you just saw is very Mongolian. That's what Mongolia is all about. Just wanted to share the country and what's happening there with you. The next news comes from, somewhere in the Atlantic. Above the Atlantic. This is what happens sometimes when you don't fasten your seatbelts in jet planes. Well, I don't know how about you folks, but I fasten my seatbelt every time I fly. Before I jump to the next news, I'd like to take a little pause and sip a little bit of this tea. And I'd like to announce that I have a message from the sponsor of this live stream. Yes, I have a sponsor. And that sponsor is me. Because no one else wants to sponsor me. So I sponsor myself. And the message from the sponsor, please like this news stream, world news update. It's seen from Russia. And subscribe to the channel if you're watching it for the first time. How about this for a message from a sponsor? Jump into the next news. It's from South Korea. Check this out. Samsung workers in South Korea have declared an indefinite strike. People demand fair wages and benefits. The workers' union claims that the actions of their members have already affected production, but Samsung management refutes the statements, saying everything is all right. Well, something like this is absolutely impossible in Russia. This is the news I wanted to show you because I want to compare it with the situation in Russia. I don't know how about other countries, but when people ask me what siloviki is and who they are in Russia, and this is a very good example. Siloviki in Russia is they are the government agencies that have legal right to use violence, and they are armed. They carry lethal weapons with them. If this, what Samsung workers are doing in South Korea right now, if this were to happen in Russia, siloviki would be called immediately, and the people who protesting people, not just against the government, but even against the company, they would be dispersed. You know, they would run away because siloviki would use weapons. In South Korea, people still have a right to go out on the streets, protest, make themselves heard, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. The next news comes from France. Unfortunate news. In 2019, a terrible tragedy happened in Paris. The famous Notre Dame de Paris burned. That's world famous cathedral. It had sustained incredible damages. It happened 5 years ago, and the restoration is still going on. The French have advanced a great deal to restoring everything to how it looked originally, but they're still working on it. 5 years. Okay, who knows how many more years it's going to take. I've personally been to Paris quite a few times, and I've seen this marvel of history, architecture. This is just an incredible building. But it seems like another cathedral in France was burning last week. And this is also what world-famous Rouen Cathedral caught fire. The fire started during the construction work at the altitude of 120 meters. And this is exactly what happened 5 years ago in Paris on Notre Dame de Paris. You know, they were doing some kind of renovation, construction works, and then the fire caught. It's sad. Next news comes from Germany, and it's, well, shocking. The news comes from both Americans and from a large corporation called Rheinmetall. It's a key part of Europe's military-industrial complex that the German company produces armor, weapons, and so forth. According to American CNN, Russia planned to assassinate its head, the head of Rheinmetall, the German arms corporation that supplies shells and armor to Ukraine. The head's name is Armin Pepperger. The Russian authorities were preparing the assassination of the head of Rheinmetall again. This guy right here. CNN citing 5 American and Western officials as their sources, and Rheinmetall obviously is furious. When the American intelligence services found out about the planning of the assassination of Pepperger, they passed the information to the Germans, and they were able to prevent the assassination attempt. A senior German government source confirmed to CNN that Berlin had received information about the plot from the United States. And also, what was confirmed that this planned assassination attempt was just one case in a series of planned Russian assassinations of defense industry executives across Europe. They don't disclose what other attempts Russia was preparing, but they emphasized that the plan to kill the head of Rheinmetall was the most thoughtful. No. And it was not the first case that Pepperger came under fire. Last April, his cottage caught on fire in one of the German suburbs called Hermannsburg, according to the German newspaper called The Bild. The left-wing radical movement members published a post on indie media platform, which they reported that it was them who set his house on fire using an incendiary device. They explained the reason, the arson, by saying that his company was one of the beneficiaries of the war in Ukraine, of the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Rheinmetall, the beneficiary? Rheinmetall made Russia attack Ukraine. The Russian authorities, I don't know. Well, obviously it's the Russians behind the first attempt to set the house on fire, and then, the second one, because Rheinmetall's been in the news. It does supply lots of things to Ukraine, and without its supplies, Ukraine would be in much, much bigger trouble now. Now, do you know what I think this is true? The Russians were planning association, because, never trust Russian media, but by certain signs, you can tell that something that happened is true or not, or alleged something is true or not. Russian propaganda and Russian state has been silent about the whole thing, as if nothing happened, as if it doesn't exist, as if there was no information about that. Alleged something is true or not. You see, if that was not true, if it was made up information, but say by the Americans or by the Germans, then Russians would go irate. They would start screaming out loud on every corner, not true, not true. Where's your evidence? Where's your proof? Oh, show us the proof, and so forth. They would start defending themselves, and they usually do that when they are right. It does happen once in a blue moon. Someone makes a mistake, accuses Russians of what they don't do, and boy, you should see them in action then. In this case, they're silent, as if this information didn't exist. Certainly no one in Russia knows about that. That hasn't been in Russian media, and you really have to research to learn that Russians were attempting an assassination of Rheinmetall's head. So I believe it. I believe the Americans. I believe the Germans. It's just, I don't know how to comment it. There's not much to be said, okay? The country has fallen so low. It's unbelievable. Well, the next news comes from Iran. folks, what happens when you study the Quran instead of the laws of physics? The law of Archimedes in this particular. If we go in history a few years back, there was lots of news in Iran, and definitely there were news in Russia, that the Iranians are great shipbuilders, that they possess the latest technology that they did not buy or receive from anyone, but they created themselves. The Iranians, the military researchers, they designed and built the latest and greatest destroyer, the jewel of Iranian Navy. It's called Sahand. Well, it was called Sahand. Check this out. Oops. Pardon me. Oy, oy, oy. Wrong ones. Sahand. Back in 2021, she took a part in a naval parade held by Russian Navy in Russia. The ship was built and designed exclusively by Iranian specialists without help of any countries. A marvel, really. What a ship. Brand new, by the way, just designed and built not too long ago, just a few years ago. I like the painting very much. I think this is very new Iranian stealth paint that makes ship invisible to raiders. See how the very nice color and very nice patterns. That's really high tech. I mean, I kid you not. I look at it again. That's worth taking a look one more time. I love it. Well, this is kind of bad news. This brand new ship was going through, how do I say that? Maintenance and fixing procedures in the southern Iranian port of Bandar Abbas. And after the repairs and maintenance was done, this ship sank. A jewel of Iranian naval technology is lost. Sad news. Let's say goodbye to the Iranian flagman. That's okay. Iranians possess the technology now. They will build more ships. The next news comes from Europe and Turkey at the same time, and this is kind of a no comment news. Again, the news have become so crazy that I don't know how to comment them. So check this out. This is Turkish fans at the European Football Cup. The Turkish fans show the Bozkurt sign in the game against the Netherlands. Turkey was playing the Netherlands. This Bozkurt sign kind of reminds me of the signs that the Germans were making about 80 years ago. Yeah, something like that. This gesture, by the way, is a symbol of the Turkish ultra-nationalist paramilitary group called Bozkurtlar. Bozkurt means grey wolves in Turkish. The group adheres to the ideology of racial superiority, anti-Semitism, Armenophobia, and Islamism. Folks, watch again. I just have one question. What's next? Concentration camps for Jews? or for somebody else. It's a shame. The next news is major. And I mean major, like major, major. The United States will begin deploying long-range missiles, long-range delivery systems, including hypersonic weapons, in Germany next year. That's according to the Pentagon. I quote, "The United States will begin sporadic deployment of its task force's long-range fire assets in Germany in 2026 as a part of planning for the permanent deployment of these assets in the future." Unquote. Now, this is, like I said, this is very important. Conventional long-range missiles, what they call firing units or assets, will include SM-6 Tomahawk missiles and hypersonic weapons currently under development. This is a big deal. The arms race back at its best. Well, it's at worst, really. And this is like nullification of everything that we were trying to do, at least my generation, everything what we were afraid of, because the biggest thing we were afraid of, the Americans nuking us, Soviets, the good people, for no good reason, because they just hated us. That's what we were afraid in the 80s. And the quintessence of this fear was the arms race. It was always about arms race. It was always in the news. They were scaring us with that, and I was scared when I was a child. And arms race, I just don't like the word. I don't like hearing it, and we forgot it for 30 years. No one brought it up, and now it's back. And that's not taken lightly by Russian propaganda. Oh ho ho ho! No 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 no! Everyone and their brother screaming, "They can't do that! That's a direct threat to Russia. We will not them. How can they? Evil Satanists. Do you see how warmongering they are?" And so forth. And I'll show you Valentina Matvienko. Meet Valentina Matvienko, Russian Parliament Upper Chamber Speaker. That's what she had to say recently about this initiative of the United States. I mean, she's very high up in the hierarchy of Russian vertical of power. She's very close to Putin.
Да, ну, я надеюсь, что этого не произойдет, потому что ответ тогда России будет жесткий и адекватный. Это уже ну, просто недопустимо. Если поднять все документы после военного времени, то Германия вообще не имеет права, чтобы у нее находилось оружие вот такого плана по тем соглашениям, которые были подписаны.
Friends, this is so important. I want you to see it again.
Звуковые ракеты ведь в Германии теперь собираются размещать.
Да, ну, я надеюсь, что этого не произойдет, потому что ответ тогда России будет жесткий и адекватный. Это уже ну, просто недопустимо. Если поднять все документы после военного времени, то Германия вообще не имеет права, чтобы у нее находилось оружие вот такого плана по тем соглашениям, которые были подписаны.
I don't get it. I really don't get it. I wanted you to see it twice. Russia was the country that breached the agreement on the Strategic Offensive Arms Reduction. It's called the Strategic Offensive Arms Reduction Treaty, or START, I think, something like that. Russia is suspending its participation in this particular treaty that was announced by Vladimir Putin in February of last year, 2023. The arms reduction treaty, President Vladimir Putin sent in his message to the Federal Assembly, February 21st. I made the live stream coverage of his speech, if you remember. So when he was making the speech, he was stressing that Moscow is suspending its participation in the treaty. the Americans were notified of such suspension. So Russia basically, I don't know what suspension means. It looks like Russia's just exited. Okay, according to the international law, that's not suspending the treaty. That's called Russia broke off the treaty. Okay, arguing for his decision, Putin referred to the NATO statement on the treaty. In Russia, it's called SNV 3. So start. The alliance issued on February 2023, in it called Russia to fulfill its obligation under the treaty, in particular to facilitate, it's hard words, facilitate inspections and return to the work on the Bilateral Advisory Commission. Do you know how that Russia's departure from the treaty was presented to Russian people? Russia is bound by this treaty, and if it exits the treaty, it becomes free. It now can deploy nuclear weapons outside Russia, anywhere in the world, even in Cuba, even in Nicaragua, even in Venezuela. The Russian propaganda went irate. We are finally free. The Anglo-Saxons, the Americans, they had us handcuffed by this treaty that we signed back in Gorbachev years. And this is such a geopolitical win for Putin. I was amazed when I was listening to that, because to anyone who has a little bit of brain in their heads, it's obvious that that's a geopolitical loss. The treaties, they're like rules for big countries who possess nuclear weapon. Rules of how to live with each other, how to make this world a safer place. And if you break such treaty, again, this treaty was a huge victory for us, for me personally, because it made us feel so much safer. And now Putin, just like that, without advising with anyone, just exited the treaty. He suspended it, whatever it means. The Americans and NATO, and everyone else for that matter, were begging Russia, don't do that. Please, don't do that. Let's discuss it. Let's, just don't do it. And the discussion was going on for years. And for years they kept on saying, Russia, you can't do that. Just don't do that. And Russia did anyway. And right now, Russia starts getting the results. The United States announces its decision to deploy new missiles in Germany is the direct result of that decision that Vladimir Putin made. And Valentina Matvienko, that lady that I showed you, she ratified, she agreed, she nodded, she approved, she accepted. She said, yes, you go, Putin. And now, all of a sudden, 1 year later, she turns around and she says, no, wait a second, they can't do that. Well, you tell me, if Russia openly threatens and brags about how it can now deploy its missiles in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, right next to the USA, if they brag about it, why Russia can't do that and everyone else can't? The Americans can't. Where is the logic? Russia wanted to be free of all obligations. Well, it's free now, but the other part is also free of all other obligations. Or perhaps Russia thinks that it is free of obligations, but the other side must keep all the obligations. This is insane. Oh no, no, you can't do that, they say. Americans, you can't place anything in Germany. Yes, we allowed you by suspending the treaty, but you can't do that because that's not how it works. You can't do that. We don't like that. Oh, how can you? We're going to give you a response. What kind of response will Russia give? I was thinking, to me, this seems huge. Okay, and I was thinking about that, and this is one of the roots of Russia's problems. It's called the Russian logic. We can, but they can't do the same. Okay, and that's where many Russian problems come from. Russia as the country and Russia as the people. Okay, we can, but they can't, because we're Russians. We're the Russian world. We're the superior, and we can. We can deploy missiles in Cuba. They can't deploy in Germany. Why? Well, because they can't. Okay. And this is a very sad situation. And it's not the last problem that Russia is having by applying Russian logic to things. The thing is, the world is big and Russia is small. And Russia is going to lose. It doesn't have enough weight. This is another geopolitical loss for Russia, another shot in its own stomach. I think Vladimir Putin is the worst leader Russia has ever had in its history. Heck, he's even worse than Joe Biden, just saying nonsense like I showed you earlier. Well, the thing is, Biden just says nonsense, but Putin does nonsense on the countrywide scale, and he's putting Russia into a deeper and deeper hole by doing these things. It's absolutely incredible. And the last news, and I think that's the most important news of the week. I was actually deciding whether, Trump's assassination or this one were the biggest ones. Well, this news, if it's true, it would change everything. Okay, that's why I made it the biggest one and the most important. It comes from China, and it's about the health of Chinese leader Xi Jinping. There has been news all over Twitter, and then everyone in Russia kind of picked up. There's rumors that Xi Jinping suffered a stroke. He suffered a stroke. He was rushed to a hospital. He's still being treated. The news originally came from China, from one of the Chinese commentators, and picked up by a couple Chinese officials, not officials, semi-officials, I think, professor at the Chinese university, and they were hinting that the big news are coming to China, as if they are in the know. Okay. No one said, the one person said that he suffered a stroke, and everyone else is in China is kind of hinting, oh, something big is coming, something big is coming. Of course, they picked it up in America, and of course, they picked it up in Russia. Now, if it's true, that would change everything, because China would have a new leader, and most likely it would have a new political direction. Most likely that direction would be favorable to the USA, and that China would start steering towards the USA. And Russia would be so much in trouble, so much more than it is now. Okay, but so is this true or not? Well, in theory, it could happen. Okay, I am very, very of this news, such news, because I'm going to give you an example. This is what was happening in Russia for a long, long time. There were rumors that Vladimir Putin was very sick, that he had cancer. The rumors started in 2019, and they were just being, they circulated in the internet, in different medias for quite some time. The culmination of this news was last November. Well, I heard so much about him not feeling well, about ambulance following Putin everywhere, about doctors, taking his turns, watching over how he sleeps and stuff like that. And you just don't know who to believe, okay? Because it is possible they show a picture of an ambulance, and then on some pictures Putin does not look well. it does not walk straight and things like that. And you start thinking, well, perhaps he's not well. But then a year passes, another year passes, and they keep on feeding the rumors. Oh, he's going to a surgery. Oh, he's getting new treatment, or things like that. And then the culmination was last November, when a famous Russian political commentator, said that the Putin died, and he was replaced by a body double, and you all remember that. So anyway, this is mid-2024. Putin's still alive and well. He walks straight. He talks straight. He's full of energy. He does not look like a person who is very sick, okay? And I have personally made a decision not to trust rumors from now on. Rumors like that, no one can prove them. And the same applies to the Z rumors. China is a very closed country, and we don't know what really is going on in China. No one does. They have cyber Great Wall, that isolates China from the rest of the world. The thing is, if news of that magnitude really does happen, if he did suffer a stroke, folks, we will learn about it everywhere in few short days. Okay, they can hide this information for a day or two, a week perhaps, but they can't hide it for long. So if he suffered a stroke, and no one knows at this point, only his close circle, I'm pretty sure that they either will start making statements and showing him alive and well, walking, talking, and so forth. And if not, then people will start asking questions, and they will have to come up with some kind of answer. And we will learn very soon whether he suffered a stroke. Significance of such an event, incredible. Incredible. China is at stake. China, I'm trying to think of what can happen if Xi Jinping is out of the picture. There are different political movements in China. There's political opposition, hidden one. The brightest example of the opposition was Hu Jintao, younger Chinese leaders, and Xi Jinping has been trying to push them into insignificance of the Chinese political landscape, okay? But they're still alive. Some of them are well. And, if Xi suffered a stroke and cannot serve as Secretary General of the Chinese Communist Party, then things will change. So I'll definitely keep you informed. And before I sign off, I'd like to ask you a favor, please. Can you pick 3 news that you like the most, and let me know down and below in the comments what they are, so I know. I constantly try to make this channel better and finesse news selection, so really important to know what you like and dislike. So please pick 3 news, write what they are, and make them available for me to see. So next time I'll get even a better selection. So friends, thank you so very much. Now I'd like to invite you to check out another video I made on how I was leaving Putin's Russia forever, and had very limited time, 36 hours. I documented the whole process. The link is right here. So please check it out. Thank you.